What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday. We're talking some NBA for you today. My name is TJ Zwarych, and I am joined by my friend Justin Carlucci, TheRealLuuch. How you doing?
Good. Be better if we had some more news, but we're just going to have to sit patiently and wait until about dinner time for some of this stuff to start dropping.
Exactly. So, as we do with FanDuel Friday, we want this to stay valuable throughout the day. We're going to talk more general strategy as opposed to position by position breakdown, talk about our favorite games to target, some injury situations, and then just some general strategy of if we're wanting to pay up, look in the mid-range, stuff like that. You know, from an optimal standpoint, we've seen a lot of stars and scrubs slates lately. And this one, with the being an 11-game slate, you'd think it would be rolling out similarly. But if we sort by RG value today and we look at the guys in the green, it is a just plethora of mid-tier players today. We got Jordan Clarkson, Cam Payne, Colin Sexton, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Bruce Brown, Evan Mobley, all these different players popping with respective players out for their team. We still have Mike Conley out for Utah. We still have Chris Paul out for Phoenix. And then for the San Antonio Spurs, they're missing Josh Richardson, Jeremy Sohan, Jakob Poeltl. So there's a lot of value opening up for the Spurs as well. What's your general overview on this slate? It looks like optimal perspectives are going to be in the mid-tier for this one, but we are still waiting for some news later on in the day, like a Tyrese Halliburton at 9 p.m. who is questionable that could open up a lot of value. What's your general outlook of this slate? How do you think we can take down some tournaments on FanDuel?
I think it first is just to be prepared. Again, if you have plans tonight, this is not the night you want to be playing. There's Tyrese Halliburton's news affects so much, and he's just one domino that's going to be falling either way here. Trae Young got downgraded to questionable. Another guy who would open up significant value and higher usage rules for a handful of guys on his team as well. So those are two huge pieces of news that could really dictate total chalk ownership in the way I'm going to be viewing some of these players. So without, putting news aside here, there are some tournament options that I don't think would garner a lot of attention regardless. And one of them is Devin Booker, who's been on an absolute tear this season so far. And of course, another one who you're really paying for, but when a ton of value opens up, is Joel Embiid, who is coming in next to no ownership. So, you see single-digit ownership on all these high-priced guys, but that should be where your mindset is going. On this slate, you're going to be able to get a couple of these guys at single-digit ownership. I know some value will open up, but as more of that value potentially opens up, that'll make a guy like DeJounte Murray extremely popular at sub 9K. So you'll still be able to get away with some of these guys that have 70-point ceilings at single-digit ownership here. So I know you're thinking maybe Devin Booker as well or Joel Embiid. Is there anybody else in this high-price range you're kind of eyeballing?
So the place I want to talk about most is this Atlanta situation because we already have DeAndre Hunter ruled out in this one, and we have Jalen Johnson questionable, Frank Kaminsky questionable, Trae Young questionable, Clint Capella questionable, Bogdan Bogdanovic questionable. So if this happens to be a game where they get a lot of random pieces back, that makes them less appealing because we don't know how much they're going to play. But if, say, we get news Bogdanovic is going to come back and play, his limit is 28 minutes, something like that, then all of a sudden he becomes one of the best value plays on the slate. If all of these guys are out, AJ Griffin basically becomes a player I would lock on every single team in my lineups today. And DeJounte Murray, if Trae Young is out, becomes the best spend up on the slate. So if I'm going to play a lot of Atlanta players, then I want to be looking at somebody like Nikola Jokic on the other side, who, if this game stays somewhat close, now I'm assuming we think Trae Young is going to play based on this current spread right now. If he's out, I think it would get a bigger lead for Denver, but Denver's missing some players as well. we got a close spread in this one, so I don't think we got to worry too much about blowout. It's in Atlanta. And if we look at the last few games for Jokic, he's been on a tear from a point per minute standpoint. He just hasn't been playing very many minutes because the games haven't been very close. And so I think Jokic becomes a very interesting tournament player for a mini game stack of this game. And that's the biggest news early on we are waiting for. If we get that news before lock, I do think it's somewhat interesting to just target some of these early games and not worry about it, this late news, and kind of just hope that it breaks everybody's playing and value doesn't open up, because we look at this Washington-Charlotte game. Close spread, not a lot of defense going to be played, fast pace. Guys like Porzingis and Kuzma could have a huge day inside because Charlotte doesn't play any defense in the key. Porzingis has just been on an absolute tear lately. And Kuzma is priced well enough that he could have a big ceiling game there. I don't think I have a ton of interest in Beal. I'd rather go with the bigs, but this is an interesting game to target with a guy like Terry Rozier on the other side, who is projecting to be one of the better mid-range plays on the slate. Oubre looks fine. Washington looks fine. And Jalen McDaniels looks like one of the better values that we have on the slate at this point in time. So I think that's an interesting game to target early. This new Toronto and Brooklyn game, 2-point spread. No one wants to play Kevin Durant with Kyrie Irving back, but Durant has been smashing lately with Irving back in the lineup. He just seems to have the core. He's not getting doubled anymore. He's taking more shots than he was when Irving wasn't playing. And he's just been playing some really strong basketball, and priced at only 10-6 on FanDuel. He has a very appealing tag. And then Kyrie Irving is just too cheap as well. So this Toronto-Brooklyn game is interesting with Siakam and Van Vliet on the other side. No one is going to be playing AD, LeBron James, or Giannis tonight. Yes, they're expensive, but this is another early game that has very high upside that people aren't going to get to. So I think for me today, running 3 lineups like I'm planning on it, I think I'm planning on backloading 2 of my lineups and front loading 1 of my lineups. I'll do one that's stacked up with these early games just in case the news doesn't fall my way, just in case the news gets a little bit different. And then in that case, I will want to do a lot of late swapping in my later lineups. I just noticed that Jamal Murray got moved from the projection pool. He got downgraded to questionable, which I hadn't realized. So that just really makes this game interesting, because makes Jokic an even better play, opens up Bruce Brown to just absolutely smash. It opens up Bones Highland to have a really big day. He's at 6-1, so it's not like he's super cheap value, but even a guy like Ish Smith becomes, I think, viable in this one as well if Jamal Murray is going to be out. And so in a game we're already wanting to target, that's news we could potentially get before lock, but if we don't, that could be something that comes right after lock that could drastically impact this slate. Next game I want to touch on is New Orleans and San Antonio. On the New Orleans side, they have top 2 matchup possible, with San Antonio and Houston being the 2 teams you really want to target most this season. And we still have no Brandon Ingram, but we do have CJ McCollum back. So it'll be interesting to see what we get in terms of a minutes limit for CJ, because he's 7,600 with no Brandon Ingram in a great matchup. That's way too cheap. As long as we know he's going to get over 32 minutes, he's projected for 33 right now. I still think he has a big ceiling at that price for tournaments. And then if he happens to not have a limit, push 36 minutes if this game stays close, I think he could break the slate. The other mid-range values there, I think, look okay, but on FanDuel, they've done a good job at kind of pricing these guys up. But on the other side, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, and Keita Bates-Diop are going to be 4 of the most popular plays on the entire slate so far. How do you like these San Antonio players in this game? They're going to be chalky, but they project very well. How do you prioritize them? And then would you even consider playing a guy like Trey Jones in tournament, the one starter here for the Spurs that will not be highly owned?
I kind of like Vassell for tournaments the most. there's not a ton of data, but if you take all the Spurs except McDermott, who might not play, off the court, there's a 100-minute sample size, and Vassell scores like 7 and change more DraftKings points per 36 minutes. So I think Vassell is maybe one of my more. I mean, on DK, you're seeing his ownership coming at 13%, which is likely going to be lower than Keldon. So I think he's a tournament play on DK. I know this is a FanDuel show. I like Vassell. I like Keldon. I would not play them together at that price. I don't think they both have ceiling games unless you get multiple overtimes here. And New Orleans has been playing really good defense, TJ. So that's the other caveat here. So they're both going to see enough volume where they're in the player pool for sure. So
I think these guys are basically cash locks, but I think they're some of the better fades on the slate, just based on San Antonio tanking this year, New Orleans being a pretty strong team, playing good defense, like you said, getting CJ McCollum back. And so we see Jamal Murray projected back into the pool now. Obviously, that's going to be fiddled with throughout the day as we wait for him to be ruled in or out. But I think with all these players being so chalky, we're going to get 20% plus with pushing over 30% for some of these guys. I think San Antonio is one of the more interesting tournament fades on the slate. And if I am playing San Antonio in tournaments, I'm going to be running it back with either a Zion Williamson, a CJ McCollum, or even a Trey Murphy, Larry Nance, heck, even Dyson Daniels, Najee Marshall type of thing, depending on what the starting lineup plays out for New Orleans today. Speaking of top two matchups on the board, San Antonio and Houston. Devin Booker, the guy we touched on already, one of our favorite tournament plays on the slate, facing this Houston team that, if this game stays close, will just be an absolute fantasy points fest. Now, it's an 11-point spread, so because of that, obviously, we're a little weary, but no Chris Paul, no Torrey Craig, no Cameron Johnson like they've had for a long time. Maybe Phoenix won't be as strong defensively as we're used to them being. That $8K price tag for Ayton is tough to get to for me, I think, a little bit. I do think he's still worth playing in tournaments because we have seen him with a huge ceiling lately now, especially with Craig out. He should be solidified some more minutes in there. I think Bridges is interesting for tournaments. Campaign will be one of the chalkier plays on the slate. He's a great cash play, but I think that's one of the reasons why I love Devin Booker so much is you just don't play Payne. You do play Booker. You're very different than the field, and you have enormous upside. And I think Damian Lee is very interesting for tournaments as well. Torrey Craig out. They're going to need another shooter out there to replace him in the corner. I think Damian Lee could be that guy. I think he's the most likely one to close in that lineup, in that closing five there. And so even if he comes off the bench, I still think he's interesting for tournaments. And the last spot I really want to touch on here, I mean, we'll talk quick. Chicago and Golden State is a great tournament spot that, because it's the last game of the slate, I don't think a lot of people are going to get there. A little Zach LaVine, Steph Curry mini stack, or DeMar DeRozan, Steph Curry, or Andrew Wiggins mini stack, Klay Thompson. I think that's a great idea too. But the one I want to talk about more is Indiana and Utah, because on this Utah side, we have Clarkson and Sexton projecting to be two of the top plays on the slate, two of the chalkiest plays on the slate. Great plays for cash. I think for tournaments, it's super interesting to play some of these other Jazz, like a Malik Beasley, or even a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We saw him get extended minutes a couple times lately. If we're going to see mega chalk on Sexton and Clarkson, I think they're also interesting fades for tournaments. Or like you could pivot with some of these with Beasley or Walker, or you could just play guys on other teams. The other thing that's very interesting about stacking up these late games, though, these Houston, Phoenix, Indiana, and Utah, is we do still have Tyrese Halliburton questionable. If he does not play, Benedict Mathurin becomes one of the best plays in the mid-tier on the slate. TJ McConnell becomes probably the best value on the entire slate.
Yeah, be prepared tonight, guys. And I think that's such a high total for Utah, 122. Big ownership numbers on Clarkson and Sexton for sure. So it's something to think about. Devin Booker, I think, is just taking over, right? He's been unbelievable lately. His last 3 games are 3 of his 4 highest usage games of the season. So I know he's shooting at an unbelievable clip, but it's good to see some merit here behind what's happening with Devin Booker in a fantastic matchup. There are so many guards in great spots today, TJ, that this ownership on Booker will be, probably exactly where it's going to be. So
I think that we'll see more than 2-3%, and we're going to see less than Cameron Payne 45%. Just the earlier you look at these projections throughout the day, the more, like the ownership projections throughout the day, the more focused they are on who is just quote unquote projecting the best, and then they'll get adjusted throughout the day here. However, we're still probably going to see well over 30% for Cameron Payne, and probably for sure sub 10%, maybe even sub 5% for Booker. So love him in tournaments today. Love stacking up these late games for tournaments. Like I said, I'm running 3 lineups today. How I'm going to do it is probably 1 lineup stacking up the early games, the other 2 stacking up the late ones. The balanced approach is going to be the chalk today. So paying up like for guys like Giannis or a Laker in the same game, Jokic, Embiid at the center position, Kevin Durant or Steph Curry, who have both been playing, and Devin Booker, 3 players who have been playing phenomenally lately, all projecting to be sub 5% owned. And we didn't even touch on a player like Jason Tatum, who has been just one of the best fantasy performers and real life performers in the NBA so far this year. So paying up for these, who had over 70 points in his last game against Miami, I might add. So pay up for a guy over 10K and you're going to be different today. Our favorites are Devin Booker, and I like Jokic, you like Embiid, but these Curry, Durant, Tatum, Davis, even Giannis all the way up at 12K, they're all going to be contrarian, and they all could be ways to differentiate your lineup and put up a very big score today. Make sure you stay tuned.
I kind of like Jokic with the Murray downgrade. If Murray doesn't play, I mean that's significant.
If we get Murray and Trae Young out, I'll probably be making rules that I'll have at least 1, but probably 2+ players from each of these teams in each of my lineups, just because they're going to be a great place to find some value in this one. And it should probably be a high, fast-paced game with a ton of scoring. Make sure you stay tuned for FanDuel Friday Football Show with myself and Andre Alford, Drizzy26, later in the day today, breaking down the NFL FanDuel slate we got going over there. We're going to be giving a free week of RG Premium away for that one. So you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button. You're watching this on the RotoGrinders page. Drop some comments for us, ask us some questions, and Luuch can help me answer throughout the day. And then if you got them in the evening, he's got some plans. And so I got you covered on there. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those things, and then drop some comments and questions for us as well. And make sure you tune in for the FanDuel Friday show for football as well. You got anything before we get out of here, Luuch?
No, I mean, it's impossible to predict the future. Halliburton hasn't missed a game. He said he's feeling okay. My best guess is trend is your friend. I kind of hope he plays. That way there's just not more, chalk to sift through. Anytime a guy gets downgraded the day of a game, I have my serious doubts. So my best guess, again, is maybe as of right now, it's early mid-afternoon. I think Jamal Murray, we might see him sit. And, same for Trae Young. I know, his projections are still hanging around, but until we have official word, we'll have to wait and see. So the downgrade on game day is never good, TJ, in NBA.
Yeah, Young, if I were to just make my best guess right now, Young and Murray, I think we will get sitting. And then I could see Tyrese Halliburton being the Q tag that turns up playing, just because he hasn't missed a single game yet this year. He doesn't miss a ton of games. And so he's somebody that I could see end up playing with that Q tag. But we'll know more later in the day. Make sure you tune into Grinders Live with Dean and Will today.
Yep.
Check out Crunch Time with Roth, Meansy, and STL. So they'll help you break down all these late news plays and get you covered up until lock. For myself, for my friend Luuch, and the entire RotoGrinders team, thanks for tuning in to FanDuel Friday, and we'll catch you for the football show later today. Peace.